ayes are 379, the nays are 38, and the amendment is adopted. The question is on the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. Accordingly, under the rule, the committee rises. Madam Speaker, the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union has had under consideration H.R. 4310, House Resolution 661. I report the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole.
The Chair of the Committee of the Whole House on the State of the Union reports that the committee has under consideration the bill H.R. 4310 and pursuant to House Resolution 661 reports the bill back to the House with an amendment adopted in the Committee of the Whole. Under the rule, the previous question is ordered. Is a separate vote demanded on any amendment to the amendment reported from the Committee of the Whole? If not, the question is on the adoption of the amendment in the nature of a substitute as amended. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to. The question is on an engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to authorize appropriations for fiscal year 2013 for military activities of the Department of Defense, to prescribe military personnel strengths for fiscal year 2013 and for other purposes.
The House will be in order. Members will take their seats. Members will clear the aisles. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the bill?
I'm opposed to the bill in its current form.
The gentleman qualified. Clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Garamendi of California moves to recommit the bill H.R. 4310 to the Committee on Armed Services with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. Strike Section 343. At the end of Subtitle C of Title 10, add the following new section, Section 1023, repairing U.S. ships in American ports to create jobs. Section 7310 of Title 10 United States Code is amended to read as follows. 7310, overhaul, repair, etc. of vessels in foreign shipyards, restrictions. A, domestic shipyards. Except as provided in subsection B, each naval vessel and each United States flagged vessel that is providing services to the federal government may not be overhauled, repaired, or maintained in a shipyard outside the United States or Guam other than in the case of a voyage repairs. B, waiver. The Secretary of Defense may waive the requirement in subsection A if the Secretary 1 determines that such waiver, A, is necessary for purposes of national security, or B, is in response to urgent repair, and 2, notifies the Congressional Defense Committee of such waiver by not later than 2 days after issuing the waiver.
The House will be in order.
Madam Speaker, I have a parliamentary inquiry.
The gentleman may inquire.
Is it not the case that if my amendment is adopted, we would immediately vote on the final passage of the bill as amended?
As the Chair stated on February 27, 2002, May 10, 2012, and May 16, 2012, if a motion to recommit with forthwith instructions is adopted, the amendment is reported by the Chair of the Committee and is immediately before the House. The gentleman from California, Mr. Garimondi, is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is a very simple amendment. This is about a 4-letter word. Jobs. American jobs. This is about jobs for American men and women. We know that there's plenty of unemployment. We've heard repeatedly, as the amendments have been put forth on this floor, that the National Defense Authorization Act is about jobs. Well, we think there ought to be a few more jobs, and we think those jobs ought to be at American ports, American shipyards, for the men and women that work in the shipyards of America. Whether those shipyards are in Guam or those shipyards are here on the continent, American workers want to go to work, and they can. With this amendment, my colleagues, with this amendment, American workers in our ports at American shipyards will have more jobs. There's few enough already. I cannot understand why anybody in this House would vote against a jobs bill, particularly one that doesn't cost us any more money than is already going to be spent. The question here is, where will the jobs be? Are the jobs going to be in a foreign port, such as Hong Kong? Are the jobs going to be in Singapore? Are they going to be in Dubai? Or are they going to be in America? Ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, we want jobs in America. We want it made in America, we want it repaired in America, and we want Americans to have jobs. That's what this amendment is about. Is there anyone here that would disagree with that? Is there anyone on this floor that would disagree with the men and women that work in our shipyards to not have an opportunity to repair American military vessels? Where are you? Which one among you is going to vote against a man or a woman here in the United States repairing an American vessel? And it's not just the Navy. This is about the Merchant Marine. This is about those American flagships that provide service to our military. Where will they be repaired? In some foreign port? Or are they going to be repaired by Americans in American ports? This is about American jobs. Not millions of jobs, but tens of thousands of jobs. Those of you that represent those ports where there are ship repair facilities, pay attention to this one. Pay attention to this, because these are jobs for your constituents. These are jobs repairing American naval vessels.
Suspend. The House is not in order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is about your job in your district. This is about your job in your district and your work and my work to make sure that we have American jobs repairing American naval vessels. Now, if there's an emergency, that's another matter. That's waived, and that's not included here. This is about your job protecting your people in your district, those men and women in your district that are at the ports, that are at the ship repair facilities, that are hungering for the jobs. They want to bring the bread back home. They want to bring food to their table. They want to pay their mortgage. And this bill provides them with an opportunity to continue to work to repair American naval vessels here in American ports, American men and women working to keep our ships on the line, on the seas, operating. And for those ships that are American flagships across this world, delivering the supplies to our men and women wherever they happen to be, those ships, too, will be repaired in American ports. This is a jobs bill. This is a simple vote for your people in your home districts, whether they will have the opportunity or whether the job will be in a foreign port with foreign workers repairing American naval vessels. There's also a small national security issue here. Many of these ships are ships of the line that provide very important services. For example, the U.S. Samuel Roberts, a guided missile frigate, repaired in Italy. I don't got a problem with the Italians, but I want those Italians in America working on the USS Samuel Roberts, the USS Blue Ridge, a command and control ship, $16 million of work repaired in Japan when it could just as easily been done in Guam or Hawaii or another American port.
The gentleman's time has expired.
I ask for your aye vote. I ask for American jobs.
Members are reminded to address their remarks to the chair and not to others in the second person. The House will be in order. For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to the motion to recommit.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Now, colleagues, we've had a good couple of weeks. We've had some late nights. We've addressed hundreds of amendments in committee, in the House. This is a joke. I mean, for them to come down to the floor and talk about jobs when they're cutting defense to this degree, taking all of the jobs out of the military, I don't even know where to begin, so what I'm going to say is thank you for your help, for your support. Let's go home and go to work in our districts and oppose this motion to recommit. I yield back.
Without objection, the previous question is ordered. The question is on the motion to recommit. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed will say no. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
Recorded vote, Madam Speaker.
A recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having arisen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their vote by electronic vote. This will be a 15-minute vote. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of the Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by 5-minute votes on passage of the bill if ordered. The motion to instruct by Mr. Barrett of Georgia and the motion to instruct by Mr. Ray Hall of West Virginia. This is a 15-minute vote.
The House winding up work on the fiscal year 2013 defense authorization bill. This is the Democratic motion to recommit, a last chance to change the bill before final passage. And this motion would, according to the Democrats, protect American jobs by requiring that naval and U.S. flagged vessels providing service to the federal government may not be overhauled, repaired, or maintained in a shipyard outside of the U.S. or Guam without a waiver from the Secretary of Defense. This is a 15-minute vote, and then final passage on the authorization bill is next, and a couple of votes after that, including two dealing with the transportation bill, two motions to instruct, one of which deals with the Keystone Pipeline, the other on the Buy American provision on the transportation bill conference report. Nick Rahall's motion to instruct, and also Representative Barrow of Georgia has a motion to instruct. Those will be 5-minute votes after final passage, which is next.
On this vote, the ayes are 182, the nays are 236. The motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor will say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. Gentleman from Washington.
On that, I ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. Sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic devices as a 5-minute vote.
Congressional Quarterly writes that defense spending, including funding for the war in Afghanistan, is expected to total almost 60% of all federal discretionary spending. This is the Defense Programs and Policy Bill for fiscal year 2013. It authorizes $643 billion for the next year for defense programs, $3.6 billion more than the administration requested, $8 billion above the cap for defense set by last year's Budget Control Act. Among the programs and policies, $6 billion to purchase 29 F-35 Joint Strike Fighters. It also establishes a new missile interceptor facility on the East Coast. It prohibits Afghan forces from guarding U.S. facilities. The bill also prohibits the transfer of detainees from Guantanamo to the United States and other countries and restricts the president's ability to decommission nuclear weapons. It also endorsed indefinite detention without trial of terror suspects. The Associated Press writes about an earlier vote that a coalition of Democrats and Tea Party Republicans fell short in their effort to end the controversial policy. The House rejected an amendment by Representatives Adam Smith, a Democrat of Washington, and Justin Amash, a Republican of Michigan, that would have barred indefinite detention and rolled back mandatory military custody. That vote was 238 to 182, one of the 142 amendments considered to the bill. This is the vote on final passage.
vote. The ayes are 299. The nays are 120. The bill is passed. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Without objection, the title is amended. The unfinished business is the vote on the motion to instruct on H.R. 4348, offered by the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Barrow, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will redesignate the motion.
Freeze on H.R. 4348, offered by Mr. Barrow of Georgia.
Question is on the motion to instruct. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
The House passes the 2013 Defense Authorization Bill by a vote of 299 to 120. A couple of last votes here on dealing with the Transportation Bill Conference Report. This is a motion to instruct by Representative Barrow of Georgia, dealing with policy over the Keystone Oil Pipeline. It's a 5-minute vote. One more 5-minute vote after this, dealing with the Buy American provisions in that Transportation Bill Conference Report. That's also a 5-minute vote, and that'll do it for votes this week, and actually for the next week or so. The House is out as of this afternoon for their district work period. They'll be out through Monday, Memorial Day, and back on Tuesday, the 29th. The Senate is in session next week, back on Monday, and they gavel in at 2 p.m. Eastern with live coverage on C-SPAN 2. The President in Washington today, but not for long. He's heading up to Camp David this afternoon. Meetings this morning with the new President of France, Francois Hollande, and meetings this weekend, the G8 leaders at Camp David, today and tomorrow, and then to Chicago on Saturday, late Saturday, for the NATO summit that begins on Sunday.
The motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The unfinished business is a vote on the motion to instruct on H.R. 4348 offered by the gentleman from West Virginia, Mr. Rahal, on which the yeas and nays were ordered. The clerk will redesignate the motion.
Motion to instruct conferees on H.R. 4348 offered by Mr. Rahal of West Virginia.
Question is on the motion to instruct. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This is a 5-minute vote.
And it should be the last recorded vote of the week. Back-to-back votes here on motions to instruct conferees dealing with the Transportation Bill Conference Report. The one that just passed, Representative Barrow of Georgia, with one that calls for conferees to insist on the House position relating to the approval of the Keystone XL pipeline. This is a Democratic motion to recommit by Mr. Rahal of West Virginia, instructing conferees to agree to sections of the Senate amendment on the highway bill dealing with the Buy America provisions in the bill. There's a 5-minute vote, and the House will be done for the week. One more follow-up to the vote we just had on the Defense Authorization Bill for 2013. C-SPAN Capitol Hill producer Annie Tinn tweets that 16 Republicans vote against the GOP defense policy bill, joining 104 Democrats. 77 Democrats joined 222 Republicans in favor of the measure. And it goes to the Senate next, and Kevin Barron of National Journal told us earlier that the Senate Armed Services will mark up their version of the authorization bill next week sometime. The administration has issued a veto threat. One more programming note, longtime House member Barney Frank is our guest this weekend on Newsmakers. He'll be joining us for a discussion about the impact of the Dodd-Frank law, in particular, reaction to the J.P. Morgan trading loss. Barney Frank on Sunday on Newsmakers, and that is Sunday morning on C-SPAN at 10 a.m. Eastern. It also re-airs on Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern.
yeas are 245. The nays are 169. The motion is adopted. Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table. The chair lays before the House the following enrolled bill.
H.R. 4045, an act to modify the Department of Defense program guidance relating to the award of post-deployment mobilization respite absent administrative absence days to members of the reserve components to exempt any member whose qualified mobilization commenced before October 1, 2011 and continued on or after that date from the changes to the program guidance that took effect on that date.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and insert extraneous material on H.R. 4310.
Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that the engrossment of the bill H.R. 4310, the clerk be authorized to correct section numbers, punctuation, cross-references in the table of contents, and to make such other technical and conforming changes as may be necessary to reflect the actions of the House in amending the bill, and that the clerk be authorized to make the additional technical corrections which are at the desk.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay, done. Thank you.
House be in order. The chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the President of the United States.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Secretary.
I am directed by the President of the United States to deliver to the House of Representatives a message in writing.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah rise? House will be in order. Members, please take your conversations from the floor. Let me get this. For what purpose does the gentleman from Utah rise?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to take from the desk Bill H.R. 4849 with a Senate amendment thereto and concur in the Senate amendment.
Without objection, so ordered. The clerk will report the title of the bill and the Senate amendment.
H.R. 4849, an act to direct the Secretary of the Interior to issue commercial use authorizations to commercial stock operators for operations and designated wilderness within the Sequoia and Kings Canyon National Parks and for other purposes. Senate amendment.
Is there objection to the original request of the gentleman from Utah? Without objection, the Senate amendment is agreed to and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Who's next? Gentleman from Utah.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns to meet at 10 a.m. Tuesday, May 22nd, 2012. But when the House adjourns on that day, it adjourns to meet at 10 a.m. on Friday, May 25th, 2012. When the House adjourns on that day, it adjourns to meet at 2 p.m. on Tuesday, May 29th, 2012. And when the House adjourns on that day, it adjourns to meet at 2 p.m. on Wednesday, May 30th, 2012.
Without objection. For what purpose does the gentleman from Minnesota rise?
To seek unanimous consent to have my statement appear in the record that earlier today on roll call 270, Smith-Washington Amendment, I voted incorrectly. I'm recorded as a no. My intent and purpose was to vote yes, but I voted mistakenly. So I'd ask unanimous consent that this, my statement appear in the record.
Without objection, the gentleman's statement will appear in the record.
Thank you.
The Chair announces the Speaker's appointment pursuant to 22 U.S.C. 276L in the order of the House of January 5, 2011 of the following members of the House to the British American Interparliamentary Group.
Mr. Petri of Wisconsin, Mr. Crenshaw of Florida, Mr. Latta of Ohio, Mr. Adderholt of Alabama.
The Chair announces the Speaker's appointment to Section 703C of the Public Interest Declassification Act of 2000, 50 U.S.C. 435 note, and the order of the House of January 5, 2011 of the following member on the part of the House to the Public Interest Declassification Board for a term of 3 years.
Admiral William O. Stubman of Great Falls, Virginia.
The Chair will now entertain 1-minute requests. For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to address the House for 1 minute and rise and extend my remarks.
Without objection.
For the last 1,115 days, the United States Senate has failed to pass a budget. If any business, big or small, were to operate in this very fashion, I submit they'd be out of business in a matter of months. Yet the United States Senate refuses to pass a budget blueprint to address what I would consider are the very serious challenges facing our nation today. This is just unacceptable. The American people are frustrated, and frankly, I'm frustrated as well. With a skyrocketing debt of over $15.5 trillion and trillion-dollar deficits happening year after year, we must come together to address the spending problem here in Washington, D.C. This is something we simply cannot ignore. We need to work in a bipartisan fashion to find common ground and put people before politics and progress before partisanship. Mr. Speaker, I supported the only bipartisan budget to hit the floor in decades because it took a step forward to address the problems facing our nation. I would encourage the Senate to do the same.
The gentleman's time has expired. For what purpose does the gentleman from Rhode Island rise?
Mr. Speaker, address the House for 1 minute.
Without objection.